A lot of people learn a simple story. They're told that World War II started on one single day. This is the myth. It suggests that one single action caused the huge conflict. That one event was the only reason for years of fighting all over the world. The truth, though, isn't that simple. History is rarely just a simple chain of events. It's more like a huge, connected forest. The roots of this war go deep. They're tangled and reach far beyond just one date. To really understand what happened, we need to look past the trigger. We need to explore the things that made such a disaster possible. The popular story focuses on one moment: the invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939. This is a clear fact. It was the clear point of no return. But seeing it as the beginning and end of the story means missing the bigger picture. The world in the 1930s was already sick with tension. Economic hardships, political instability, aggressive ideas. These forces created a fragile environment, an environment where a single aggressive act could shatter the peace of the entire world. This exploration isn't about changing the facts. The facts are clear. The dates are recorded. Instead, it's about adding context. It's about understanding the gradual buildup of pressure. We'll look at the treaties that failed to keep the peace. We'll examine the economic despair that fueled extremism. We'll see how nations, driven by ambition and fear, made choices that led them down a dark path. The start of World War II wasn't a single event. It was the result of a long and troubled history. A history that began long before the first shots were fired in Poland. Our journey will peel back the layers of this history. We'll see the myth for what it is: a simplification. A convenient but incomplete story. It shows how a series of events, decisions, and beliefs slowly came together. Each one was a step closer to the edge. The invasion of Poland wasn't the reason for the war. It was just the moment when the world finally fell apart. The stage for this collapse had been carefully set over the previous 2 decades, building an unstoppable push towards conflict. The immediate trigger is well known. It happened in the hours before dawn on September 1st, 1939. On this day, the armed forces of Nazi Germany crossed the border into Poland. This wasn't just a small fight. It was a full-scale invasion. The German army used a scary new way of fighting. They called it the Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. It was a powerful mix of air attacks by the Luftwaffe and a fast, overwhelming charge by the Panzer tank divisions and the infantry. The plan was all about speed and impact, aiming to cripple Poland's defenses before they could fully get their forces ready. Poland fought bravely. Their army was big and determined. However, it was poorly equipped to counter Germany's better technology and tactics. Polish forces were caught between 2 powerful attackers. A secret agreement had been made between Germany and the Soviet Union. On September 17th, Soviet troops invaded Poland from the east. This sealed the nation's fate. Trapped in this pincer movement, Polish resistance was overwhelmed. The capital, Warsaw, suffered heavy bombing and attacks, before finally surrendering on September 27th. Poland was divided between the 2 invading powers. The invasion of Poland was a direct challenge to Great Britain and to France. Both nations had promised to defend Poland's independence. They had hoped this promise would stop Adolf Hitler from further aggression. For 2 days, the world held its breath. Diplomatic channels buzzed with frantic last-minute efforts to stop the fighting. But Hitler was determined. He ignored the ultimatum given by the Western powers. They had demanded an immediate withdrawal of German troops from Polish soil. The deadline passed without a German response. There were no more options left for talking things out. On September 3rd, 1939, what had to happen, happened. Great Britain officially declared war on Germany. France officially declared war on Germany. This act turned the fight between Germany and Poland into a European war. Soon, it would involve the whole world. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain of Great Britain told his country the news in a serious radio speech. The hopes for peace in our time were completely broken. While the invasion of Poland was the clear start, Great Britain and France declaring war was the official beginning of World War II. The stage was now set for a conflict of a size and destruction never seen before. To understand Germany's aggressive actions in 1939, we need to go back to 1919. World War I had ended. The winning countries met to write an agreement. The result was the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty completely blamed Germany for the war. It forced crippling financial payments on them. It also greatly limited the size and power of the German army. The German army was limited to just 100,000 men. Their navy was mostly taken apart. Their air force was mostly taken apart. Key industrial areas, like the Rhineland, were made into demilitarized zones. Many Germans saw these terms as a deep national insult. This feeling of humiliation created a fertile ground for resentment. It was exploited by extremist political movements. Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933. The Nazi Party came to power in 1933. They promised to restore German honor. They swore to break the Treaty of Versailles. One of Hitler's first main goals was to rebuild the German army. In 1935, he openly defied the treaty. He announced the reintroduction of mandatory military service. He revealed the existence of the Luftwaffe. This was a direct violation of the terms set out in Versailles. The international community's response was weak. Great Britain was tired of war. France was tired of war. They were also dealing with their own serious economic problems. Many politicians believed that some of Germany's complaints were legitimate. They followed a policy of appeasement. This meant making concessions to Hitler in the hope of avoiding another major conflict. This policy, however, only emboldened him. It signaled that the former Allied powers lacked the will to enforce the treaty. Germany continued its rearmament program at a furious pace, building a powerful modern military machine. In Asia, the Empire of Japan had invaded Manchuria in 1931. It sought to establish dominance over the Pacific. In Europe, Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy dreamed of a new Roman Empire. In 1935, Italian forces invaded Ethiopia. The League of Nations proved powerless. Its condemnations and sanctions were ineffective. This showed the world that aggressive expansion could continue with few consequences. The international system designed to maintain peace was failing. The political unrest of the 1920s and 30s was deeply linked to economic trouble. World War I had shattered Europe's economies. Nations were buried under huge debts. Then, in 1929, the Wall Street crash in the United States kicked off the Great Depression. This was a global economic disaster. It led to massive unemployment, hyperinflation, and widespread poverty. In Germany, the economic collapse was especially bad. People lost their life savings, businesses went bust, millions were left without jobs and without hope. This created a mood of desperation and fear. In such deep times of trouble, people often lose faith in the old ways of doing things. Democratic governments seemed unable to fix the economic problems. In Germany, the Weimar Republic was seen as weak and not getting things done. This disappointment opened the door for extreme ideas. People were drawn to leaders who offered simple answers and a strong hand. In Italy, fascism had already taken hold. In Germany, Nazism gained massive support. They promised to bring back national pride, make the economy stable, and crush political enemies, especially communists. Nationalism and militarism became powerful and appealing forces. The clash of these ideas became a main feature of the time. The world was splitting into unfriendly camps. On one side were the fascist and militaristic states. Germany, Italy, Japan. They formed an alliance known as the Axis powers. On the other side was the communist Soviet Union. And then there were the Western democracies, Great Britain, France, the United States. These groups viewed each other with deep suspicion and hostility. The Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939 became a dress rehearsal for the bigger conflict. Germany and Italy backed the nationalist forces. The Soviet Union supported the Republican government. A particularly dark element of this ideological conflict was the rise of state-sponsored racism. Nazi ideology was built on a foundation of anti-Semitism and racial purity. It presented Jewish people as an internal enemy responsible for Germany's problems. This racist propaganda was used to justify persecution, violence, and taking away rights. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935 made this discrimination official. This dehumanization of an entire group of people wasn't just a side effect of the regime. It was a core belief. It helped justify the aggressive and brutal policies that would eventually lead to war and genocide. Pausa. As the 1930s drew to a close, a series of critical political moves put the final pieces in place for war. The policy of appeasement reached its peak in 1938. At the Munich Conference, Great Britain and France agreed to Hitler's demand to take over the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a large German population. They did this without asking the Czechoslovakian government. They believed this compromise would satisfy Hitler and ensure peace. But it was a huge miscalculation. It showed Hitler that the Western democracies would avoid direct conflict. March 1939, Germany broke the Munich Agreement. German troops occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia. The illusion of appeasement was shattered. It showed that Hitler's goals went beyond just uniting German-speaking people. He wanted to control land. London and Paris realized their plan had failed. You couldn't stop more aggression by giving in. It would have to be done with force. They promised to protect Poland's independence. One of the most shocking events was a secret agreement between enemies who had different ideas. August 1939, they signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, a non-aggression treaty. Secretly, a hidden plan. The plan divided Eastern Europe into areas of control. It gave Germany the green light to invade Poland. Hitler no longer feared fighting on two fronts. So we're back to the beginning. The story says one date caused the war. The truth, 10 years of building pressure. The invasion of Poland on September 1st, 1939 was the spark. But the ground was soaked in gasoline. The shame of Versailles. The failure of giving in. The worldwide economic crash. The rise of aggressive ideas. The tricky agreements between countries. Understanding World War II isn't about seeing a sudden storm. It was a hurricane that had been getting stronger for years, shaped by countless choices, until it finally hit land that fateful September.